Bulletproof Radio, a state of high performance.
What's the difference between traditional Finnish or Swedish or Norwegian kind of, sit there with steam or heat and an infrared sauna? Because I think a lot of people listening might not know.
Yeah, so the difference essentially is the way the heat is delivered into the body. Is with infrared, the heat goes, especially if you get a high enough amount, which we can talk about. That's what makes Sunlighten special. That's what I've studied for all these years, is how to get the maximum in the body. So infrared, if you can get the maximum heat and you master the wavelength, then you can get it all into your body to change and transform your body. Traditional Finnish saunas have hot air and they heat the air, and the wavelengths stay in the air. So you're still hot because you're hot if your air is hot, right? Like if it's a hot day, you're still hot, but the wavelength stays in the air. So the healing properties that actually transform the cells, like that it stays in the air. And the hotter the wavelength is, the shorter the wavelength is, and the harder it is to get into the body. The cooler the wavelength, the longer it is, the easier it is to get into the body. And Sunlighten has mastered the maximum amount of long wavelengths, far infrared specifically, to get into the body. So that's essentially, like when you walk into a Finnish sauna, like to make it really simple, sometimes you're like, oh my God, that's hot, right? Because you're feeling the air, the heat in the air. When you walk into a Sunlighten infrared, there's no, it's warm, and it actually, once you start to sit there, right, you start to feel hot from the inside, and you start, your heart rate starts going, but it's not this oppressive, like gasping feeling. Right. that is different. So they're two completely different experiences.
It's sort of like if you go into the shade on a really hot day, you're still really hot. Yeah. But if on a cool day you go into the sun and the sun warms you up, it's a very different feeling. And it turns out there's different biological effects from it. And
correct.
So it's not just about heat. It's how does heat delivered? Is it through convection, through conduction? And what we've figured out over the last 20, 30 years is that heat's generally good for you because of heat shock protein.
Yes.
But the delivery method of the heat really seems to make a difference. And I feel very different if I go into traditional wood-fired sauna and there's some hot steam versus if you're actually getting an infrared dose, presumably because it penetrates deeper.
Correct.